Today we are continuing down the path of the Jedi. We're going to do the belt. It's an interesting belt. Let me show you what I got. We're starting with dyeing, by the way. I am made of leather, just like this belt. So dye will do what it says. I have a tan we're going to start with. So I've found when I dye things, it gets way too dark way too fast. So we're going to dilute just a little bit. Once it's done, I'm going to hit the whole thing with acetone. Tends to clean it off pretty well. So I'm going with a very thin mixture. It's always, you can always add more color. You can never take the color back out. You can, but it's just complicated. Like real complicated. I'm going to start on the end, just to see if I like it. It's not a bad color. I think we're going to wet the whole thing first. I'm just dipping the piece of leather, which I believe is a 3-inch belt, just straight into a tub of water. Just waiting for it to change color, and then move on to the next chunk. Alright, that's a bit better. Now we just apply. I don't know how I feel about this. I may want to add a little red into it. So I have some ox blood right here. Which is a nice red color. Because this seems a little yellow for my taste. For what we're going for, at least. Like I said, I'd rather do a ton of light thin passes than one nice dark pass. Oh, that's very red. Oh. I think I want to go a little darker. And I want to lean more towards the tan. I've seen this done with an airbrush, and airbrushes look absolutely stunning. I just have not gotten to the point where I'm airbrushing my leather yet. I'm sure I'll get there. I'm just not there yet. Airbrushing makes a nice, a much more even application of the dye. So I would recommend it. But like I said, I'm just not there yet. And I want to make the top belt just a hair darker than the bottom. Okay, I like that color. That color matches the tabards we made really well. All right. I'm adding that same slightly darker slightly darker dye just along the center of the main belt, which should bleed out just enough to give us a hint of a shadow line. I do enjoy making Jedi belts. They're super fun. I think it's going to look perfect. I'm going to wipe everything down once, and then let it dry for a couple hours. Trying to find somewhere to hang these. I have a hook right up there. And one there. I'm going to go grab a clip, hang it up, and then I'm going to clean the whole table off with a little bit of acetone to get this dye off. Last thing I want to do is bump into a freshly dyed thing. So everything has had time to dry. This is going to be a fantastic looking belt. And then with the leather tabards on top of it, oh my goodness, this is going to be an awesome looking Jedi. So everything has had time to dry, so now we fix that. I'm going to wet the edges, and I'm going to use this tool. It's called a burnishing tool. It compresses the fibers, and it just makes it nice and slick. So I'm doing the long edges on both the big belt and the little belt. Again, we're just going to use a little bit of water, a bit of paper towel, and wet the edges, run this over it a bunch to compress the fibers. Go in little sections at a time. I found if I lay it over the edge of my table, it works much easier than trying to fight with it vertically. So I'm going to burnish all the edges, and then we'll be back in a minute so I can show you the difference. Everything's been burnished and it looks fantastic. Nice crisp edges. I'm going to take some saddle soap. We coat the whole thing in saddle soap. Saddle soap is it's a polishing conditioner. It should seal everything in and add a nice waxed top layer to this. I'm going to put a little on my paper towel. And just polish. But you can already see the difference. Let me come a little closer so you can see a little bit. So this is with and without. There's just a nice depth and a shine to it that really looks good. I'm probably going to end up doing 2 coats of the saddle soap on it. Just because I want to make sure everything's nice and sealed and none of the color is going to bleed anywhere. Because this is part of a costume, it's not the whole costume. And it darkens it up just a touch. Alright, same thing for the big piece. I'm just going to keep applying, buffing and applying and buffing for a little bit. We'll pick this up in the morning once everything's had ample time to dry. Everything's been top coated, burnished, and stained. Not in that order, but nonetheless. Now we're going to finish the top belt part, put the buckle on, and we're almost done. So as at Tandy, I found these, they're not Sam Brown buttons, they're actually called button studs. But I've copper ones. I'm like, that's awesome. It could go really well with the copper buckle I'm going to use. Except the screw, the post is. I thought it was 2 millimeters, so I grabbed a thing at 2 millimeters, and 2 mil doesn't fit, and 3 mil doesn't fit, so it's probably 2.5 mil screw post. I'm like, that's not going to happen. So we're just gonna go back to brass. Let's use brass. I want to snap this little post right here off of this buckle, and then it'll push it flat. Strictly speaking, you don't have to snap it off. You could just leave it, because it could go through 2 layers of leather and hold everything in place, but they break off pretty easy, because this is actually zinc. So then I need to flatten it out a little bit. I could also take 2 boards and just use a screw clamp and flatten it out. Should probably be the right way to do this. but that just flattens it a little bit, so it'll look much nicer on the belt. But if we wrap the belt around, it's going to be very bulky on the end. So I want to skive the ends. And skiving just means you're cutting the edges off, so it's beveled in, so when it folds over it's not so bulky. But I am going to cut it directly in half, because the buckle goes in the middle. This is a skiving knife. It's real easy to use. That's it, right? So I'm going to go 1.5 inches. Yeah, we'll go 2 inch. So when I fold, it's got a nice even taper. All it does is it thins out the leather. So that is what we get. I think the brass and the copper are going to look nice together. So since I have to do brass, or have to do, yeah, brass for the Sam Brown buttons, we're going to do brass for the, because I'm going to do a center rivet on the belt right there. Luckily, I've all my hole punches. And since this is going to go through all of layers of leather, it's the best way to hold. It's the best way to hold everything together. I normally drill out my leather, but to be quite honest, I have no idea why I'm not doing it this time. Before I get too far, I want to make sure. It looks like that is the right size. All right, we also have to find the middle of the belt, because everything is connected. And I have this weird little tab that needs to go away. I'm just going to grab a square, mark it, and then cut it off. This belt is exceptionally long, by the way. And I know this. So I don't have to be super, super exact with the placement in the middle. I want to be relatively close. I want to be, I'd say right there. That looks about right. Okay. All right, so what I did, right? Bunch of holes, put my Chicago screw through. Now I have everything lined up for where I need it to be. I can fold this one over, pre-punch all my holes, and know everything's going to line up about the same. Never going to be exact, but it'll be close. So I'm just lining these two up next to each other and putting a hole about where I want it to be. This flexes, so it's not super critical. As long as this,
sure how to help you with that.
As long as the top is lined up, it should look fine. All right. I have a much smaller one I'm using as a center punch, by the way. Since it's got to go through like 2.5 layers, I can just use it to line everything up, kind of like a Coleco. So So when that bends, that'll be perfect. There you go. Now I know exactly where to put my hole. So before the camera died, I had 2 holes here and 1 hole here. This loops through and then gets a Chicago screw through all 3 pieces. I really like how that looks. But we're not done yet. These Chicago screws, stud buttons, whatever you want to call them, hold the little belt in place. I want to go 3 inches from the center in both directions. Four inches from the center, sorry. Almost made a slight mistake. And then 6 inches from there. So this is just the math I've seen. It's what it looks like they're doing. I could be wrong. I'm going to get something that looks kind of like that. I really like the brass, by the way. I wasn't sure I would. So that's up to a 32-inch waist, by the way. Before you want to space things out a little more. Yeah, we'll punch it. What the heck. We've been having fun with that, right? See if we can get you to focus on this very shiny thing. Okay, the center of this stud is offset from the edge here. So when we punch our holes, we want to be off just half the distance of this. So I want to make sure my belt is centered. And then what I like to do is I like to roll the stud itself back a little bit so I can mark where the hole goes. And then I punch everything. I only did one side so I can show you the other side a little closer, so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. The annoying part about this whole process is all of this has to come back apart so we can Loctite everything in place. You don't want these to be super tight either. There should be a little room to float, because you don't want your belt binding up on you while you're at a troop or out and about. So it should have nice room to move. That's perfect. All right, I'm gonna pull you in so you can see exactly what I was talking about with rolling the buttons back. So we have these studs in place, right? I want to roll the stud back this distance, the distance from this center to this edge. So I just roll it back just a little bit. I put a mark right where it was, and roll that one back a little bit and put another mark. So now I know I'm in the center. Well, let's do these two since I'm here. So now I know that these marks right here, although this one is very difficult to see, are exactly in the center of these studs. Again, since I have to redo this one, make sure we're lined up. I'm going to roll this back just enough and put a mark. Then I punch out all these holes. So for the most part, the belt's done. It looks amazing. The color is just fantastic. I added red on the very top edge, which gives a very, very subtle, I don't even know if you can see that. No? Right there? A subtle red line. Oh, that looks so good. I'm very happy with it. All that's left is the closure in the back. That's not getting done on the belt because it's going somewhere else. And I can't size it to the person just yet. So I'm going to make a mock-up one and send it out so they know how to punch their own holes. I got 2 strips that are this size. It's going to emulate the back closure. So I'm going to put a mark at the very center of the flat part every inch for 3 inches. That's enough movement. So if weight fluctuates, because people have weight that fluctuates, that should adjust for it. I have this very interesting tool. It's a round hole punch with a little cutter on the edge that is specifically designed for these buttons. So I am gonna knock a hole because it cuts a hole and a slit, which makes putting these buttons on easier. Like I said, 3 holes every inch. Then I'm going to do the same thing on this one, except it's going to be along the top and the bottom, so that when these overlap, there's holes up on top and on the bottom. So I'm just going to slide this one up, use it as a guide. And again, just going to use the same bit and punch a couple holes. This is overkill, by the way. I've seen lots of Jedis just use Velcro. There's nothing wrong with Velcro. But in Acolyte, I can never say that in Acolyte, you see the back of a Jedi one for the first time without the little, because normally there's a little flap over the thing, and this is exactly what the back looked like, which is why I like doing it like this. Because I've got to be extra. So now I'm just lining everything up and punching in the top holes. You don't have to have these fancy punches, by the way. You can just use a drill bit and a drill. Works just as well. I normally prefer that, but I figured since I'm using a new fancy bit, we're going to have a little fun with it, huh? So this is the part that I found absolutely intriguing, is they went backwards. I know what you mean, but what do you mean backwards? Let me put a couple of Chicago screws and I'll show you what I mean. So I find this very intriguing. We're going to back up and reposition so I can show you. I find this interesting, right? So the big part overlaps this way, whereas the little belt overlaps this way. That way when they pull on each other, they're just tightening everything. That is super neat. It does hold everything super secure. Last I checked, for the Rebel Legion, you have to have a flap over how your belt is secured. So once everything is said and done, that's pretty much what it's going to look like, right? There'll be snaps on the back, but it covers everything up. It's nice and protected, and I really like the fact that that's how it goes. I think that's super neat, right? That they overlap each other like that. I just think it's cool. but he's coming along. Not bad. I'm very, very happy with how everything is turning out. We did get a little red overspray in a couple of spots. It's weathering. It looks good. It looks fine. The belt looks spectacular. I'm very, very happy with it. Like I said, everything gets taken apart and then re-put back together with just a drop of red Loctite on it. You don't have to use Loctite. People use glue. Some people just hope and pray, which also works real well. I just want to make sure that no matter what, one of these studs isn't going to pop off. So thanks for making it to the end. I appreciate it. This is your kind of thing. If this is your jam, if Jedis are your thing, maybe think about subscribing. I got lots of videos. We're gonna make pouches next, or cast something next. I got a couple of interesting ideas that need to finish off this. For Rebel Legion approval, you have to have a certain number of accessories on your belt. Be it pouches, food capsules, lightsabers. We're going to work on pouches. I think we're going to work on pouches. But if you want to see that, the only way to see it, stick around. So, again, thanks for making it to the end. We'll see you next time.